When I talk to friends and family back home and I talk to them about how happy and how amazing I think Dubai is, compared to living in Denmark and living in the West, I'll usually get some of the same comments like, oh, they're oppressing women and it's a dictatorship and like all these weird comments. And when I ask them, hey, where did you hear about this? Because it's not true. It's not a horrible place to live. We usually come to the same conclusions that they got it from the news, the mainstream media. So in today's video, I thought it would be a fun little thing to do to actually show you and kind of compare the contrast between the news that you get fed in the US and the UK, sort of what the normal news headlines are in the West, right? And then compare that to what you're getting fed in Dubai and actually show you how big a difference there actually is. Because regardless if you actually read the news or not, because I don't personally read the news, it will still affect you to some extent. Like think about it for a second. If you only get fed news about people being killed and all these dangers and like political scandals, it's unlikely that you won't just be a little bit on edge, right? Live just a little bit in fear because everything you're hearing is just about this catastrophe and this scandal and this person being corrupt, right? That makes sense. If that's the only thing you're actually consuming, of course it would affect you to some extent, right? But before we dive into it, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Rasmus. I'm the owner of Minix. That's a performance marketing agency where we specialize in helping e-commerce brands scale through UGC videos and paid advertising. Also, if you end up enjoying this video, actually find some value from it, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. That would massively help me out. And if you have any questions or comments, anything you want to talk about after watching the video, I read all comments and respond to all questions. So just leave them down below and I'll be happy to get back to you. But with that being said though, let's get straight into it. So what I basically did here is that I just went on Google and just randomly searched for news about the UK, news about the US, and news about the UAE. And I literally just clicked the first link on Google for the first website that came up because hey, that makes sense. If that's the first thing that comes up, usually that's what most people will read about online. So I spent 5 minutes just kind of looking at the first few articles, and first thing here, I just want to kind of read them for you because there is a very stark contrast. So first thing is that, I Googled news about the UK and that took me to BBC. And here's the first thing I just saw on their homepage, the first 3 articles that kind of popped up and that I kind of noticed. First thing was Met police to stop attending medical health calls. The second one was 2 men die from being pulled from sea. And then the third one was a flesh-eating bug nearly kills new mother. So obviously not super pleasant news. Maybe that was just what was trending at that time. It's surely pretty clickbaity. I think we can all agree to that. Now, second off, we have the US. So again, I just went on Google, searched news about the US, and it took me to CNN. This is just from their homepage and the first few articles that came up. So first article, that's a long one. That's a bus driver and passenger opened fire on each other on a moving Charlotte train bus, leaving both injured. The second one is 3 people killed and 5 wounded in shooting at motorcycle rally in Red River, New Mexico. And then the third one is please wear, this is a funny one, please wear clothes in your digital driver's license photo, Georgia official urge. So I don't know what the fuck is going on with the people in Georgia, but yeah, I think for everyone, just please wear some clothes. But again, kind of same storyline, right? Kind of same silver lining is that it's very clickbaity. You would obviously get a little bit of fear if this happened, in your area. If you're in Charlotte and you heard about people shooting each other, obviously that's not very pleasant. So those are the UK and the US, right? I think we can all agree there's a silver lining. It's very much fear-based, right? Very clickbaity, and it does evoke some negative emotions in you. Now, here's the UAE. Same thing with Google. So went on there, Google news about Dubai, and I went to gulfnews.com/UAE. But here's the 3 articles I found here that was on the front page. So the first one is how Dubai will boost government services for residents. The second one is Sheikh Mohammed approved 1.6 billion in housing loans. And then the third one is UAE donors backed aid for 3 million flood victims in Pakistan. So clearly you can see there's a very stark contrast, right? In the UK and the US, there's silver lining of very fear-based articles, right? People being killed and people dying and mental health stuff and people not wearing clothes. But in Dubai, it's very different, right? It's about new projects, what's happening, and generally just more good feel news, right? And so even if you don't read the news, even if you don't actually know, what's on the front page of CNN and you don't read the newspaper, it's like inevitable not to just live in a little bit of fear, right? Because like obviously you have friends and family that actually watches the news. Maybe you have a dad or a mom or a grandparents or something like that, and just friends in general, right? And they will obviously bring this stuff up because some of these things are, pretty serious. And if you're in Charlotte, for example, and a bus driver and a passenger shooting at each other, obviously some of your friends will read that, pick up on it, and probably come tell you, right? So there is some sort of fear aspect that you just can't get out of. And that's the same thing in Denmark. Like it's all about like, oh, here's the new political scandal and here's like all the shit that's going on basically. But in Dubai it's very different because we talk about like new projects, because that's mostly what's happening. Like Dubai is in high development right now, a lot of new projects being built, and they're building out like infrastructure. And also like it's true, there is no government like there is in the West to actually discuss all these things. And that obviously can have its disadvantages, if it turns into like a full-on dictatorship. Maybe it is categorized as a dictatorship, I'm not sure. There's no one to like debate on this, right? You don't have like a right wing or left wing to argue about all this for months on end and then nothing just gets done. There's just one guy saying, look, this is what I want done. I want a new skyscraper somewhere and that's what we're gonna build. Great. That happens, right? And so in Dubai, they have a very, very clear vision for what they actually want to achieve with the city and the emirate. And in general, GCC has a lot going for it in terms of visions and where they want to take the whole region. And that's just a very stark contrast to, living in the West in general, and especially Europe, and also like just Denmark. And maybe if you're not living in Denmark or in Europe, you can kind of relate to it, but it's just so much about like political scandals and stuff. And I think it's because, especially in Denmark, like they've built everything there is to build. Like they've built on pretty much all of the land. Nothing new and exciting is like coming up, and there's not enough happening around like development of new buildings and new like tourist attractions and all this stuff to actually talk about it. So the only thing the news can kind of resort to get, their clicks, because that's what they live off of, is that people actually subscribe to the newspaper or click onto the website and actually read the articles, is that they have to talk about something that's negatively charged and actually invokes some sort of negative emotion, because that still gets people to click, right? And as I said, even if you don't read the news like I don't, it's impossible not to get affected by it. So I cut out news like years ago because I realized just for myself, look, even if the president or king somewhere, or like there's a flood in Thailand or something, I can't do anything about it. As an individual and someone who's not in politics, I cannot do anything about it. So it can only affect my life negatively because I can't provide any positive change for it in the current situation that I'm in my life. So it's better for me just to cut all that off and just focus on myself and focus on what I can do and what I can do for myself to actually make myself happy, right? So I can kind of redirect all my thoughts to what I want to focus on, instead of just constantly having the news punching me in the face with all these negative things that's happening around me. Because like, truth be told, I can't do shit about it, right? And even then, it's very hard for me to escape it whenever I'm back home, because at least it used to be like that. But whenever I'm back home now, because my apartment is rented out in Copenhagen, whenever I'm back home, I live at my dad's house, and usually they have the news turned on. And so I had to ask him politely one time, like, hey, whenever I'm home, could you just like not put on the news, because there is literally nothing you can get out of this. There's two things the news talk about: the weather, which is boring as hell, or they talk about some sort of scandal, some sort of thing that's gone wrong to invoke some fear. So even if I'm not caught up to date with the news, I still get affected by it. The only time and place where I could get away from it was when I lived in Spain with my brother, because he doesn't watch or follow the news at all as well. We're both like pretty ignorant about it, because we both came to the same realization. So when we lived in Spain, none of us are reading the news, none of us are watching anything. So, we're just not talking about it. It doesn't come up in conversation. And even with, my dad, he's been reading like the newspaper for the past 30 years or something. I had him do like a fun little exercise. I think it was last summer or last Christmas when I was back home. I asked him like, hey, why don't you just like try this one thing for me? I was like, just count all the articles in the newspaper and just count how many are positive and how many are supposed to bring some sort of negative emotion. And he counted them, and it was like 85 or 90% of all the articles were actually negative, which was quite a shocker for him, because he never realized that. And then last Christmas, he actually told me, hey, I unsubscribed from the newspaper, because also got to the same conclusions that it doesn't bring me anything in my life, because there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. If you want to read about finances and stuff, you can literally just subscribe to some sort of specific finance newspaper or email service, something like that, and they'll like feed you the most important stuff, which is what he's into. But like for the most part, news doesn't serve you any purpose. And I think that's a big contribution as to why people in Dubai are just super happy, because there is a very, very clear vision in Dubai about what the state and emirate actually wants to achieve. And you know, there's constantly things happening. There's not all this gossip that you have in the West. And so when you constantly fed these sort of positive articles about, oh, we're building, you know, recently I saw just this on Facebook randomly, but like they just opened 3 new beaches, like night beaches that are like state of the art. That's the sort of thing that's happening in Dubai, and that's just not happening in Denmark, for example, where I'm from. So that's sort of what I can relate to, right? And so when you're constantly just exposed to all these positive things and all these new things happening, you as well get happier because you're not exposed to all this negative feedback and all these negative articles. So it doesn't even cross your mind to actually be negative. And that probably also comes because the news are censored or something. I don't know, but I could imagine that also plays a role with it. But honestly, I love it because whatever can bring me more peace of mind, I'm all for it. And I think for yourself, like if you're someone who constantly watches the news, I think you owe it to yourself to, you know, be as happy as possible and actually take charge of your own life. And I personally don't think that you get any sort of value from reading mainstream media, because if you actually do the exercise and you read the news and you try and count, okay, how many articles are there and how many of them are negative and how many of them are positive, you would find an overwhelming amount of these articles are negative loaded. They're supposed to bring you some sort of negative emotion, fear, anger, sadness, something like that, right? But yeah, that pretty much sums up today's video. I think that's why the West is keeping you miserable, and I think that's why a lot of people, especially here in Dubai, are super happy. And I think a lot of people in the West can't really relate to it because they haven't experienced it themselves and because a lot of people consume the news. But if you found any value in this video, I would love for you to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, anything you want to debate about maybe in the comment section, just let me know down below. I'll be happy to get back to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.